On this episode of IT Unplugged, we sit down with the Director of Market Intelligence, Alyssa from M2 Logistics, and see how technology is changing the industry.
At M2 Technology, we're on a mission to make IT accessible to everyone. Join us on our journey to demystify the ever-evolving world of business technology. Are you ready to get unplugged?
Welcome to IT Unplugged. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Alyssa.
Alyssa, I'm so excited that you're here with us today. You know, you work over at M2 Logistics. That's kind of the parent company of M2 Technology. Would you mind just kind of explaining a little bit of what you do, who you are, and what M2 Logistics kind of does as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here. So M2, I'm recently new to M2. I've been there for a few months, but we're a 3PL headquartered in Green Bay, Wisconsin. We were founded in 2001. Our primary network is North America with surface-based transportation modes. We are expanding internationally and kind of getting into some other modes as well. So really, any customer looking for logistics services can work with us and we'll find a solution for them. So one of the first things I heard at M2 that I thought was really interesting is we are a business of people working with people. And what that means is when you have an issue or you have a question, we want someone to be answering the phone, and we really try to have a personal business for our customers and carriers to work with. That has proven to be true in my time there, and I think it's so great because externally we do that as well, and internally. So I've really enjoyed my time there. It's a really personal company, a lot of great people that I'm working with on a daily basis, so I'm having a great time.
Yeah.
So what do I do there?
What do you do?
As I said, I joined a couple of months ago, so I'm the Director of Market Intelligence. Fancy title.
Yes.
But I primarily focus on pricing, so both in a spot and contract aspect, and then our market data, point of view, strategy, anything around the market is what I'm primarily working on.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so you know, you went to school for finance, right?
Yeah.
So did you kind of envision yourself getting into logistics? Like, how'd you land in logistics as an industry?
Yeah, so it's so funny. I talked to the person that sits next to me at work, and he did not start in logistics either. We always say, like, everybody in this industry did not start here or intend to be here, but so you end up with a really diverse background and a lot of different experiences in an organization, which I think is really great and translates to some awesome insight. So as you said, I studied finance in college. I also did statistics. So I'm a math person by nature. And that translated for me into my first role out of college, being a risk analyst at a commodities trading organization. So doing a lot of analysis and really understanding, hey, this is what our data is, and this is what that means, and what decisions should we make from that. So I really took a lot from that role, learned a lot from the folks there. My next role is when I really entered logistics. However, I was still a logistics analyst. So in that role, I was doing a lot of visualizing of data. So we were using SQL to kind of extract it, make it usable, and then using Power BI to visualize that. And the end consumer was, our operations group, our customers, et cetera. From there, I took my biggest turn and I went into the customer-facing side. So I started managing customers that were external to our organization. At the time, we had external and internal customers, primarily in a backhaul capacity, but also did some OTR, some project cargo, expedite, kind of specialized depending on my customer base. So that was the first time that I really took all that data that I had produced and looked at and, honestly didn't understand in depth and applied it. So I always took kind of an analytical approach to managing customers. It really worked for me. But that was definitely, where I cut my teeth and where I learned kind of really the foundation of knowledge that has served me through the rest of my career. I loved it. There was definitely some tough days and some tough customers, but that knowledge has just been invaluable to me since then. So I really enjoyed that role and spent, as I said, multiple years in it. My last role prior to coming to M2 was back in the analytics space. This time I was overseeing a capability. So we were less on the technical analyst side of building the reports and more on the consumption side of data, where it's, hey, we have this data and this is, this chart is trending up and to the right. What does that mean for us? What are we going to go do with it? So really the application of analysis and data in the business and trying to get insights off of that, which by the way, I think is a really common gap for a lot of logistics organizations, because you have all these really technical folks on the analyst side and the data front, and then you have operators who are great in the ops space. So it's like, how do you close that gap?
Yeah.
So I was focused on that. And then obviously recently came over to M2 and have been here since.
Yeah. Well, we're really excited to have you. And, I'm happy you explained the role and like what you do as well. Because when I saw it, I'm like, okay, that seems like super broad and awesome title. But it's like, what is that exactly? So, So, as you've kind of gone through those roles and stuff, I mean, how have, like you, somebody that's comfortable using technology, really helped kind of like propel you to the next level as you continue to go? And is this job even possible without technology? Like, do you have to be a tech savvy person?
So tech savvy, I think, is an interesting definition, because as you know, even in our organization, we have people from all different work backgrounds, some very technical, some not technical at all. And I think everybody finds a way to use technology. I think if you don't, it's going to be hard to keep pace with an organization that's leaning into it, which M2 definitely leans into technology. For myself, though, I think like being able to use technology and adapt it into your work processes, that, especially if it's boosting your productivity, that's always going to translate to performance. And for me, like, I've always valued being more productive and being able to do more things with less effort. So leveraging technology has always been key to my growth. And I would really like give that advice to anyone. And it doesn't have to look the same, like I said, for everyone, but figuring out a way to leverage it is really important. And then, from the organizational perspective, your organization has purchased or decided to invest in this tech for a reason. The only way they're going to get the value from that is if people use it. So getting the ROI for both yourself and the organization, I think, is really, really critical. So how are you going to do that, and what does that look like? And the last point I'll make on this question, because I think it's interesting, is especially when you're young in your career, you really want to move through roles super quickly. A piece of advice that I would give to people is become an expert in the tools that you have in the role that you're in, because before you know it, you'll be moving on to the next role. So for example, my first role out of college, primarily we leveraged Excel to do our analysis after we got our data out of the risk software. Surrounded by Excel experts, became an expert in Excel. That has served me every single day in my career since then. In my second role, I wrote in SQL, did a lot of coding. I haven't written a lot of code since then, but really helpful in data-focused conversations because I know what they're talking about and I can be a part of the conversation. So that experience and those tools compound over time. So take the time that you have in that role when you have it to really learn that tech, become good at it and figure out a way to leverage it later on in your career.
That's such a great point, because you see so many companies using something at like 10 or 20% capacity, and you're like, yeah, you use this, and they're like, yeah, I use it for my role, but just this little this little piece of it. So, that's great advice. How did you kind of become an expert? Because you mentioned like, I'm surrounded by Excel experts. Like, what's your style? Are you going, hey, there's the smartest Excel person, I'm gonna go hang out with them for a while? Or do you like dive in and get into the, like the guides or watching videos online? Like, what does it look like for you?
So I really learn by watching people and then repeating that. So the first person that ever sat next to me at my first job, he worked in Excel and never touched his mouse. So he only used keyboard commands, and he moved through Excel so quickly. And really, like, Excel is so boring. So everybody's like, this is a tech podcast, why are we talking about that? Excel can be extremely powerful if used in the right capacity and with the right knowledge. So I frankly watched him, or he would lean over and show me things. Same with the other people that I worked with, but really just watching them use it, being like, oh, I didn't even know that using the command keys was going to do anything for me. And suddenly you don't have to use your mouse and you can just move all around. So now though, in Excel, I think we have a lot of different ways to get that knowledge. I use AI all the time, and I say, hey, this is the formula I'm trying to write. And it gives you the formula. So you can quickly learn new commands, things like that in Excel. So I love watching people, but now, I definitely use resources available to me. Obviously Google is fine too, but AI really produces an answer for you that's, in my opinion, immediately workable. I'm totally there with you. I remember it's so humbling when you're watching an Excel person do Excel and you're not an Excel person, because I'm admittedly, I can use it, but I am definitely using AI right now to be like, all right, how do I make this better? And then I'll send it to somebody and I'll be like, can you make this look good? You know what I mean? And then suddenly you've got a worksheet with a million parentheses in a formula, and you just look like this Excel genius. It's like, who wrote this? ChatGPT wrote this.
Absolutely. Yeah, I remember one of my first jobs, we were hiring store managers, and we had to go all around the U.S. and we had to geographically map it. And my director came up behind me. He's like, "What are you doing?" And I was just like doing it manually, and he just did like 3 different commands and sorted it all. And I'm like, oh, I feel so silly. But that's the power of having a tool that you like fully understand and taking advantage of. So.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you can always pull on that experience, even if you don't work in Excel, maybe you use it in some other capacity. So I think, just taking the time to learn the tool while you have that time, because at some point you'll be in a role where you might not have time to become an expert or really focus. Maybe you're leading people, etc. So, take the time while you have it to learn what you can.
Yeah. So you're using these tools and looking at data and trends all the time. Like, what are some tools that you kind of use to make decisions? And then also, like, I guess the importance of using the technology to make sound business decisions, because it's great to get all of it, but that's not enough to just get a bunch of data. So what does that kind of look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So great question. On the market side, and this is not going to blow anybody away, I'm primarily relying on market data aggregators. So DAT, Triumph, Sonar. What I think is interesting about those tools, which you just hit on, is they're producing a set of data that without context isn't super meaningful. Yeah. And it's accessible to everybody. So anybody can go purchase a login to DAT and look up the rate on a lane, let's just say Chicago to Atlanta. We're all going to see from a market rate basis the same market rate today. So maybe it's $1,000. Of course, I'm making this up, but what matters is how you act on that and how you apply it to your business. So I'm also using these sources in conjunction with our own data, and that gives you perspective. So maybe that means we need to go purchase better, or maybe that means we need to sell higher, but then also the ability to act on it. So really, what does it mean to your business? What are you going to do with it? And then are you able to actually take that action? M2 is really agile, so that's been great. We can adapt to things really quickly in the market. But I'm primarily using those resources combined with our own data and really, hey, here's what this means to us and why we should do something with it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think, we've met with a couple customers, even at M2 Technology, not specifically what we do, but it's one of those things where like, we have all this stuff. What do we do with it? And it's like, okay, we can help you. And like, we can put it all together and break down some silos, but like, you really need to figure out what you can do in your business with this information. It seems like it's the differentiator right now between companies that are moving in a positive direction and ones that are just kind of stagnating and going to be kind of left behind.
Yeah. So. And I think it really speaks to, I think there's kind of this conversation right now that I hear as it relates to tech and businesses of, oh, is AI going to replace jobs? And I really think it speaks to the importance of talent and having the right people in the right roles, because, the technology is so available. It's probably not giving you that much of an edge just on its own. Do you have the right people to make that valuable? And what are you doing with that? So I think that talent conversation, I think it's like almost more relevant and more important than ever right now, because it's leveraging these tools in the right way and in the right way for your business. Just because it means one thing to one brokerage doesn't mean it's going to be the same thing to another one.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I kind of want to pivot just a little bit here. Yeah. Because in logistics, like, you're working with technology all the time, specifically around like spot pricing. Yeah. And things are changing. So like, the more that I learn about logistics, the more my mind is just a little bit blown, because I can figure out what for M2 Technology, like what managed service providers in IT are normally charging and different things like that. And I figure it out. And it's like, this is good for 6 months. And then I can go back and pull some more data, and then it's good. But with logistics and spot pricing, you guys are changing things like by the hour, it seems like. Yeah. And there's so much information. So how does a logistics company leverage technology to, for better pricing on their services, better pricing on the day-to-day business, and just staying competitive?
Yeah, so the spot market's a really interesting place where technology is being leveraged if organizations are choosing to lean into it. So we at M2, for example, we're currently implementing AVRL. So AVRL is automating our spot bidding where we can on our customer front. So obviously there's an efficiency gain there. If you were previously placing a manual bid, you can now place an automated bid. What can your people do with that extra time? more importantly though, it's really like where our customers want us to be. And what I mean by that is, so we've worked with a lot of customers for a very long time, and primarily customers have two strategies they deploy when covering their freight. One's the contract market, and then one is the spot market. And, they're pushing that out to a board. We've heard from them that they want us to participate as much as we can. And then they also want a quick response. So AVRL helps us on both of those fronts. Obviously, the frequency that we're out there is constantly because it's automated. And then we're responding extremely quickly to those rates so the customers can get the freight covered and off their dock. So that has been a win for us and our customers. The other thing I'll mention on that point is humans, it's hard for them to leave bias at the door. And so I think you get a lot more accuracy in your pricing. And it's not that they're trying to like intentionally sway the rate, but they might look up a market rate, but they know in the back of their mind that 2 weeks ago they got burned covering that lane. So now they're going to increase it or change it in some way. Automation won't do that, and you can really stick to the strategy that you've deployed for that customer or that market. And I think that overall is going to generate a much more positive result for your business in the long term, because you're going to be able to be consistent with the strategies that you want to maintain and really price the freight accordingly.
Yeah, that's so interesting, because you've mentioned before, and we have the same motto at M2 Technology, right? Like people working with people. And then you hear hey, we're going to be leveraging technology and things are going to be automated. And it's been a great selling point sometimes for technology, for logistics, like, hey, we're real people. So like how much thought and consideration goes into a decision to make something automated, and does it help that it's a win-win, I guess? Yeah,
I think there's a ton of really a ton of conversation, I should say, to come to that decision. If we didn't have that type of feedback from our customers, we wouldn't be doing it. But as we go through, the rollout and the implementation, and we say, hey, we have this tool, we're going to be automating our spot board, the response is overwhelmingly positive. They're excited for us to be more active on their boards, because obviously, like on our side too, like we need to give a rate that's realistic for both us and then for them. So the more accurate our pricing is, really that's benefiting us both. So we've had really good responses from our customers, and it does help that it's a win-win. But like obviously there's efficiency gains, but really on the customer side, like it's super exciting to see them wanting us to leverage that technology and then being able to leverage it on our side as well. It's been really good.
It's kind of fun to find that. That's what I kind of like about logistics is like, there's so many times where it's a win-win situation rather than, and we want that with all of our partners as well. But it's like, it's in collaboration, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Even though you're kind of negotiating all the time within stuff. So very neat. So since you've been here for a little bit now, is there any pieces of technology that you're looking at and you're like, I really think like we need this in our business when it comes to M2 logistics? Yeah. So in my capacity in pricing, we obviously have the spot side, which I just talked about, AVRL. On the contract side, we recently invested in speed to quote for a long-term contracting RFP tool. That has been a game changer on efficiency. So when you get RFPs, and this is, if somebody is in logistics listening to this, they'll understand, but you have to, every customer sends them out in their own format. You got to decide which market data you want to pull in, your own data. It can take hours to just get all of that in one format. And now we can do that in about 20 minutes. It's insane. So it's a super efficiency gain for us on the pricing side. And then obviously operations, like they're busy. So how can we quickly get rates in front of them, let them know what strategy we deployed, and get their sign off on it before we go back to the customer and submit that. So the whole cycle has turned around so much faster. I mean, I didn't even know that was a thing. M2 had got that before I came here. However, I've been the primary one, me and one other person leveraging it. It's been awesome and it's been great. I don't know how we would be doing it because we don't have a big pricing team, and that I think is also consistent across a lot of logistics organizations. I don't know how we'd be managing the RFP volume and getting them out in a reasonable time without having a tool like that. So I really loved it. Obviously, you still need to come up with your own rates, but getting just that administrative work of like cleansing data and getting it consistent has been a huge time saver for both of us. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, if there's any IT companies out there that do that for our RFPs, and you want to make a shout out, we're definitely interested, because it is so cumbersome, and like you're doing a lot of the times the same thing over and over and over.
Yeah.
But it still has like a personal level,
Yeah.
and you want to put your own flavor into it, where it's like you essentially like need to have something in place, but we still haven't even found a great thing yet on our side, where it's like, man, I know this RFP is going to take me 3 hours, but I know exactly what I want to say and how I want to say it with the data that I have, but I haven't gotten it down to that point yet. So I can only imagine at the scale that logistics is doing that it'd be really, really beneficial.
Yeah, it is.
So there's a lot of wins that you've described. What's like a tech headache right now for logistics companies? And is it, maybe it's adoption of technology, maybe it's security concerns. What is it that maybe some other logistics companies that are listening right now would be like, yeah, this is probably it?
Yeah, I think there's a few pieces to that one, and it's a great question because I've seen this all over the place at lots of different organizations. I would say, do you have the right people in the right roles who are ready to adopt new technology? Again, goes back to the talent piece. Like, that cannot be overstated how important that is. If you have people with a growth mindset who are ready to take on new things, I think you'll get technology to be adopted much quicker. I think the second part, and this is huge as well, is the implementation and integration. This, again, cannot be overstated. Your systems need to talk to each other, and they need to talk to each other accurately and quickly, because if you purchase a new piece of technology that's not properly integrated, now instead of someone needing to go to 1 or 2 screens, now they got to go to a 3rd screen and manually key in whatever it is that you were trying to hopefully, translate via some sort of integration. So I think integrating it properly to make it actually be efficient, because the second a user goes in and they have to do something extra manually, I think you're going to lose a lot of ground right there. So that's really important. And then third, adoption. Have a plan, like have either a project team or a product champion, get your people using it, and really like have some accountability for them actually using it. Because if you purchase this tool and you don't get an ROI on it, why did we do that? So adopting it is absolutely key. And I think you need to have intention and have a plan to do that. Yeah,
no, that's great. So the adoption aspect being a talent thing, right? And having growth mindset people. The integration aspect is interesting, because like, do a lot of logistics companies have the internal resources to integrate these systems and different things? Or like, what's the answer for these places that have never done something like that? Because I just know with vendors, sometimes they'll sell you the shiny thing. And they'll be like, look at what it can do. And then you get it and you open up the box and you're like, oh, it can do it. Now I have 100 hours of work, you know what I mean, to get it there.
Yeah. Exactly. So I think that question really depends on the size of the organization. I've seen logistics organizations with full-blown IT departments, and I've also seen them with none. So I think that presents a unique set of challenges depending on the situation. I think there's always a way to get it done. It's really how quickly you can. I know we have some great resources at M2 that make that stuff seem like it's no problem, which I really, really appreciate and I do not take for granted, but it can definitely be a hang up because now you get it in and it's not working. What do you do with it?
So okay. So one last question here. If a business is like maybe working with an M2 Logistics or maybe some other logistics companies, what are some questions that they could ask that's based around technology to just make sure that they're in good hands and that they have a partner that's like looking towards the future and not kind of stuck in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I was a business owner in this scenario, I would be asking a logistics partner, what tools are you leveraging and how will that benefit my organization? And really that can be framed up around what's important to you as a business. So maybe you want to have great visibility and know where your shipments are all the time. Maybe you want to have highly vetted and qualified carriers. Maybe you want to have a really seamless invoicing process. So there's tools that they can be leveraging in the market if they don't have them internally to make those processes go a lot smoother. And, by partnering with them, you get the benefit of that. So at M2, for example, we partner with a bunch of great providers in the vetting space, in the freight audit and pay space, in the visibility. We even have a TMS that you can use if that's a gap in your supply chain. And the only person that you need to work with and integrate with is M2. So really, they should be able to tell you what technology they're leveraging and how that's going to benefit you. And if they can't probably a red flag. And even if you don't think you need it now, you might want it in the future for your business. So having a provider that already offers that, it could be getting you guys to maybe having visibility sooner than you thought, or it could be something that you need down the road, and that's a quick switch for them to turn on if they already have it. So that's what I would be asking and just thinking about, especially, as we modernize, and I think customers have that really like Amazon effect expectation. Sure. Getting data faster and more frequently with more accurate results is never going to hurt you.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. That's great, especially for business owners that might not know like what's all happening in the logistics space.
Yeah, there's so many things that we're plugged into behind the scenes that make, our response to you, however you see that, holistic and make sense. And those would be things that you'd have to go purchase on your own directly to get all that information. But good news, like we already have it. So hopefully your provider would too, if you're going and looking for a new logistics company to partner with.
Yeah, absolutely. So is there any kind of technology that you're kind of keeping your eye on that might change the industry or like be a big splash in the upcoming years?
Yeah, so honestly, I feel like it's overwhelming, the pace that tech seems to be coming out in the logistics space right now. I would say AI as a category, there are some AI agents like Augment and Happy Robot that I think are doing some really cool stuff to automate mundane tasks, responding to emails, things like that. Things where you don't really need a human element in. Maybe it's something that you see 100 times a day, every day. So I think businesses finding ways to leverage tools like that will be interesting. I also think the AI space is developing so quickly. What will we see in 6 months, in a year? And really, how are they going to differentiate? Like they're all kind of blending together at a certain point. And it's like, how do you differentiate yourself and really offer a business something unique? The other thing that I'm keeping an eye on that I think has a longer tail is really like autonomous trucking with partners like Gatic. We had a capacity crunch at one point. We will get there again. It might not be soon, but being able to operate a truck 24/7 is going to be an advantage, and it will be a disruptor in the market, in my opinion. I think the headwinds there are how quickly do businesses in both society accept and become okay with driverless vehicles on the road and backing into their docks. So I'm keeping an eye on that. I don't think it's happening tomorrow, but they're out there. They're running routes. And I think it's super interesting. It could be a huge disruptor for us as we look to the future.
Wow, that's so interesting. Because I never really thought of like social acceptance of it. Yeah, I'm socially acceptable about this little smart car that's like plastic going down the road from, a big semi. Like, a little bit different. Probably.
Right. It's like you're driving down the interstate and you look over and there's nobody in the cab. Are we okay as a society like that? And, how is it making decisions on the road? So I think it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for your expertise on this. It's a totally just interesting area right now, and how technology is just permeating the logistics space, and the companies that are taking advantage of it or the ones that are kind of ignoring it. There's going to be a big difference in the future. And I'm happy that M2 Logistics is kind of on the half of embracing it as much as we can. Yeah,
we're certainly leaning into it. And we're super excited about, what we and our customers and carriers can benefit from it. So we're excited about it, and I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks so much for watching IT Unplugged. Make sure you check us out on all the socials. Reach out, maybe you have a topic that you want us to talk about next. So thanks so much, and see you next time.